Hello everyone, tonight we are standing just outside a window that won't close. The frame is warped, the glass is cracked, and though no wind is blowing, the curtain inside pulses like a heartbeat. You are here just close enough to hear what's being sung from the other side. It's quiet, barely more than breath, but it's following a melody. It knows all the words. You don't. You probably won't survive. Not because anything will reach through that window, no claws, no curse, but because you're going to listen. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I do here. Let me know where you're listening from and what time it is there. Now, turn off the lights, maybe turn on the fan for some soothing noise, and let's get started tonight. The song doesn't begin when you hear it. It began long before. Somewhere beneath your feet, beyond the stone foundations of this place, below the twisted roots of plants that no longer bloom, there is a room. Or was. A low chamber with earthen walls that once smelled of chalk and moss, and something sweeter like pressed violets or powdered milk. There are no doors to this room now. Just the old melody clawing upward, note by note, through the gaps in memory. You don't know the lyrics, but they come anyway. Humming, rising, never louder than your breath. It starts whenever a child is left alone too long. The village folklore calls it the cradle tune, though no one remembers who gave it that name. It's said the melody was first written by a woman whose children died in winter, or by a traveling priest who never baptized the infants he buried. Or, and this version is the favorite among children, it was whispered into a sleeping mother's mouth by something standing beside her fire. Something that smiled too wide. The tune has only 4 lines. The third one is the problem. People who hear it in full rarely speak again. Some stop aging, others simply stop being. Their shadows stay longer than they do. It's a gentle song though. It doesn't force itself into your ears. It waits to be invited or hummed, which you are not doing yet. This house you found, part ruin, part museum, is supposedly from the early Neolithic. Not many structures from that period still stand, especially not in this quiet corner of the world where hills forget their own names and rivers run in the wrong direction every spring. But here it is, a stone ring sunk into the soil with half a roof made of bone. Some researchers still argue whether it's a ritual nursery or just a granary with artistic flair. One archaeologist, now retired, insists the floor plan matches dream burial sites found near ancient wells in Anatolia. Another claims it's just where someone stored mammoth milk. Jokes on the mammoths weren't particularly dairy-friendly. You've walked here before, of course. Every local school tour does. But today, you're alone. The wind didn't pick up when you arrived. The sun didn't dim. You even took a selfie by the antler-shaped lintel. So you didn't notice the hum, not at first, but now it's in your jaw. Your teeth want to chatter not from fear but from rhythm, a vibration trying to turn your bones into tuning forks. Funny thing, Paleolithic flutes made from bird bone can mimic the tones of this lullaby's first line. Some claim the notes were passed down not as a melody, but as a breathing exercise for calming infants. Others say they were for guiding the dying. You're not dying, of course, just listening. The second line makes no sense in any known language. Linguists think it's nonsense. Syllables, a kind of prehistoric scat singing meant to soothe through repetition, like oral honey. You are now aware that something is moving behind the walls of this nursery ruin. Not a person, not an animal, more like fabric or time itself. A wrinkle smoothing towards you. You haven't heard the third line. Not yet. You're thinking about humming. Just the first 2 notes. Just to see if they match the shape in your memory. You didn't know you had this memory, but now it's there. Under your tongue. One archaeologist reported hearing the third line in her sleep for 7 consecutive nights. On the 8th, she spoke in syllables that matched nothing in any recording. Her journal, found buried in a clay urn she left on her own doorstep, contains only 4 words on its final page. Don't let it rhyme. We joke about haunted songs. the pop lyrics that predict disaster, the jingles that follow you into dreams. But what if the oldest melody wasn't meant to be heard but to be avoided, a sonic fossil? A leftover instinct that curls the ear shut before it can finish. In some cultures, children are taught to cough loudly when a melody seems too familiar. Others leave berries near cradles to trick the tune into thinking the child is still sweet and unknowing. One tribe reportedly paints ash spirals around their children's ankles before sleep, not for protection, but so the song gets tangled in the loops and forgets the way. You haven't taken off your shoes. Good. Still, you're close. Too close. The melody is clear now, just outside the ruin. You aren't humming, but your lungs are moving in time. And that third line, you'll know it's coming when the air goes still. When the insects in the grass stop moving. When your breath sounds like it belongs to someone else. And when the curtain in the broken window begins to sway again, this time inward. You don't remember stepping inside, but here you are. The floor is packed, earth dimpled with ancient heel marks. Not stone, not tile, just memory pressed into dirt. The roof is half collapsed. A spider's lattice of bone ribs still arches above you, the pale leftovers of aurochs or deer or something even older. And nestled between two larger vertebrae is a stone cradle hollowed smooth. It is not facing you. It is facing the wall. You don't feel cold, but your fingertips feel wet. You haven't touched anything. Once a baby was laid here and never taken back. That's what the inscription says, if you can call the winding scratch marks an inscription. One scholar argued they were ornamental like swirling wind or eel tracks. Another insisted they were teeth marks from desperate rodents chewing for salt. But the third researcher, a linguist with a nervous laugh and too many notebooks, proposed something else. They're breath paths, he said, the way air moves around something being sung to. He was politely asked to leave the dig. No one likes the idea that air can remember. Here's the first joke. When air has a good memory, the ghosts don't even need walls. You try to hum again just to make noise, but the moment you part your lips, something exhales before you. The song almost begins, then stops. Not interrupted. Corrected. The cradle is still facing the wall. There are carvings on that wall. Faint shapes drawn with mineral pigment and bone ash. A tree with no leaves. A figure with arms that split into branches. And below them, something smaller, curled and unfinished. One archaeologist once suggested this was an early depiction of metamorphosis, a child becoming a tree or a tree becoming a mouth. Her paper was never published. She left academia after a sound technician attempting to photograph the pigment for analysis went briefly missing inside the ruin. He was found sitting just outside the entrance with no shoes, humming what he claimed was the full melody but backwards. His teeth were vibrating. The dentist who examined him later described the sensation as almost pleasant. Second joke. When your dentist describes something as pleasant, you are already cursed. The lullaby remains quiet for now, though its structure presses around you like fog with corners. The first line you almost remember. The second line you almost feel. And that third one, that dangerous phrase, is coiled now at the back of your tongue, like a fossil-shaped syllable that doesn't want to evolve. A real ancient fact. The world's oldest known musical instruments, bird bone flutes from the Swabian Jura region, date back at least 40,000 years. Some have holes arranged in pentatonic scales, meaning even our distant ancestors preferred familiar soothing intervals. But one flute found broken beside a child's remains had no discernible scale. Its whole pattern didn't repeat. Musicologists called it unsingable. The cradle is still turned away, but now there is something inside it. A lump of cloth. A bundle of reeds. You can't quite see. It's not moving, not breathing. But something inside your ribs adjusts as though to match its rhythm, or to brace for the lack of one. You step closer, the air flattens, and now you notice the nest. It's not a bird's nest, too large. Tucked into the back corner of the nursery, it's made of fibers. Grasses, fur-twisted strands of something fibrous and dark. Inside are things that almost look like toys. A carved tusk, a tiny bone comb, a loop of string that no longer holds a meaning. You feel a breeze that shouldn't exist. It smells like honey and cold ash. Third joke. If the nest smells like memories, you probably shouldn't sit down in it. Children in early agrarian societies were often buried with objects. Ritual dolls, charms, small tools. But in this case, the objects feel more like lures, as if something built the nest to coax a child closer. As if the tune wasn't sung to lull the baby, but to lure it. Reels in the breath, hooks the name. Some say the melody was meant to confuse the night, to lull shadows instead of infants, a protective measure. But the version you're hearing now, this one feels reversed. Someone, or something, is being lulled back to wakefulness. You turn to leave. You do. Your feet don't move. Because something else has moved. The cradle. It is now facing you. Nothing inside. Just that lull. The third line is getting closer now. You feel it not as sound, but as hunger. A need to finish the phrase. To resolve the tension. It's like the final note of a chord waiting to land. Even silence feels wrong without it. The nursery knows this. The bones above you curve downward just slightly, like an ear bending toward your throat. You speak aloud not to challenge it, but to prove that you're still real. You say, "I'm not a child." Something somewhere rocks once, slowly. Then silence. Then the first note of the third line. Soft, from the wall, you step backwards. The earth is no longer packed flat, it's softening. Sinking. You feel your shoes press deeper into what might once have been cloth. You don't know the next note, not fully, but it knows you. Your name doesn't feel right anymore. And the nest, it's starting to sway. You have not heard the full third line, but you have begun to dream it, not in sleep. No, you're still awake, but in the folds behind your eyes, something is now humming. Not a tune exactly, more like a suggestion of one. A breath trying to make itself into music. You step back from the swaying nest, but it's not the nest that matters anymore. It's the cradle, still empty, still facing you, but with something new inside it, now something you didn't place there. A small stone, smooth and pale, lying where a head might rest. You think, "I know this stone." But you don't. You've never seen it. You've only heard of it maybe in an old anthropology text or whispered during a tour. The term is milkstone. A superstition that placing such a pebble in a cradle would keep milk flowing and babies quiet. Harmless, right, except the real milkstones were kept by mothers, not placed beside infants, and they were never this smooth. Folklore. Note: in some ancient cultures, stones that became too smooth too quickly were removed from homes, not because they were cursed, but because they were considered finished. Done collecting, done listening, full. You are not done listening, but something is done collecting you. Your left foot twitches. That was not voluntary. Let's pause here for the fourth joke. If the melody can hum without lungs, it doesn't need your permission to finish the verse. You reach for the cradle not to touch it, not exactly, but to be sure it's real, not imagined. The air around it feels like exhaled breath. Warm, rhythmic. The cradle itself is colder than it should be. The air pulses, once, twice, then nothing. A stillness so deep your own heart seems hesitant to beat. That's when you hear it, a fourth line. Just one word. Sung too slowly to be spoken. Stretched like a name whispered through sleep. It has no meaning, but it's familiar. Your spine tightens. You don't know how you recognize it, but you do. Some researchers still argue whether Paleolithic languages carried musical tones like Mandarin or Vietnamese, where pitch changes the word. A few believe tonal dialects are far older than previously thought, originating in maternal speech patterns, the sing-song voice of comfort, of warning, of lullabies. In other words, a language made for the very young, and for those who stayed young forever. The word sung here now may be a name, or a command, or the sound a mother makes when she stops remembering how to speak. Either way, your knees feel weak. You lower yourself to the edge of the ruined cradle. Not sitting, just crouched. listening. The wall behind it breathes again. Your fingers touch the dirt. And that's when the lullaby forgets itself. It breaks, just for a moment. One note is wrong, or missing, or reversed. It's not silence, it's subtraction, like a shadow pulled inside out, and the absence leaves a shape behind. In the wall, there's a small depression you hadn't seen before. A hollow in the stone. Maybe the cradle once rocked that way, or maybe something inside rocked against it, over and over across years until a groove was worn. Or a face, because it does look like a face. Not clearly, but enough. 2 indentations where eyes might have been. A long groove for the mouth, and below it a smear of pigment red ochre fading. Ancient fact. Some Neolithic burial sites contain red ochre scattered over infant remains, as if to simulate blood or warmth or protection. Scholars debate whether this was ritual symbol or mistake. One theory, the pigment didn't represent death, it was meant to confuse it, to paint the baby still alive. Some graves wore makeup, some lullabies do too. You look away from the wall, the nest is no longer empty. There's something now folded into the tangle of fibers. It isn't a doll, it isn't a bone. It is small and breathing. It is not looking at you. And neither is the cradle anymore, because the cradle is rocking, very gently. You feel your pulse move to match it. Your lungs sink. Your eyelids droop. Not from sleep, from rhythm, from instruction. You do not know the third line. You do not need to. The song is being completed around you. Some folklorists believe the third line of the cradle tune isn't sung at all. It's acted. A motion, a breath held for precisely 7 seconds, a glance in the wrong direction, a footstep over the wrong patch of earth, the feeling of being sung to from inside your own skull. One traveler who visited the ruin only once wrote in their notebook, "It's not a song, it's a loop, a spiral. Each verse brings you closer to its center." They were later found wandering the adjacent field at night, humming with their mouth closed. You should leave now. You can still feel the wind on your arms. You can still hear the insects outside. That means you still exist in the waking world. But you cannot feel your name. It's somewhere behind you now, in the cradle, or in the groove on the wall. Maybe it's being whispered back to you. Maybe you'll be someone else when it finishes. There is no melody now, not because it has stopped, but because it has become the room. Each breath you take is a note being played, each blink an echo, each heartbeat a verse being remembered by something that doesn't need to remember anymore. It has become the remembering, and it is listening to you listen. The stone cradle has ceased rocking, not in peace, not in sleep, in decision. The thing in the nest is no longer curled. It is seated, upright, watching the wall. You try not to look too long, not because it's frightening, but because it looks so certain. Children are not supposed to be certain, not in the presence of lullabies. That's the 5th joke. Anyone confident during a lullaby isn't the one being sung to. The walls have grown darker, or maybe the pigment has returned. The figure once smeared into the corner now seems clearer. Its long fingers spread outward, no longer branches but bars. A ribcage made of gesture. And beneath it a spiral carved in fingertip-width lines. Not perfect, but insistent. Spirals are the oldest known symbols etched into burial sites across Europe. They do not speak, they turn. Some scholars say they represent rivers or eternity, or the sun's path. But others think they are maps, not of places, of songs. You try to stand. You cannot feel your feet. You try to speak, but your voice has rejoined the melody. It is now the room that is humming through you. The 4th line, yes, the one that shouldn't exist, is unfolding inside your ears like a curtain being drawn back. Not violently, lovingly, carefully, like someone preparing you to forget. Another fact. In 1977, a clay tablet was found in Syria, inscribed with one of the world's earliest known lullabies. It pleaded with an unnamed spirit not to wake the child. The lyrics translated loosely as, "Do not disturb the boy." He is touched by sleep, not by you. The word for sleep and silence were the same, and the word for you not explained. The figure in the nest begins to rock. Once, then again. And you too. Just slightly. Not enough to notice unless you are looking for it. You are swaying. The cradle joins you. Then the wind. Then the dust. Everything is part of the rhythm now. There is no lullaby anymore. There is no child. There is no third line. Because the third line was never a sound. It was the turning. It was this moment. You look at the doorway, not to escape, just to know if it's still there. It is. But faint, not like it used to be. It is behind something now. Not a wall, not a shadow, a veil, like smoke made of bone. A memory of leaving. You understand what must be done. Just like the others. The footprints in the dirt, the grooves in the floor, the missing pigment, the scholar who left behind her breath, the tourist who forgot their shoes. You begin the melody again. The first line is soft. The second nonsense. The third unspeakable. The fourth. Well, by the time you reach the fourth, it isn't a lullaby anymore. It's a memory of someone else. Waking up. The nest creaks. The figure inside it speaks. Not in words, in breaths. And you answer. Not with your voice, but with your stillness. Because what the melody needs is not volume. It needs you to remain. You crouch beside the cradle. Your hand rests near the smooth milkstone. You are a watcher now, a singer, a spiral, a line without end. The air accepts you. The silence begins. Somewhere in the dirt beneath your knees, the breath of 1,000 lullabies is still exhaling. You don't hear them not all at once, but you feel them. Like the slow release of warmth from stones long after sunset. Like the pulse that remains in the drum after the hand has gone still. Like the hush after a child stops crying because something older has begun to hum. You are the hush now. The air inside the ruin has grown thick. Not unpleasant, just close. Like a warm blanket that's been folded too many times. You can't remember what your breath sounds like when it's not being echoed. You try again just to check. It sounds like someone else. That's the sixth joke. If you hum long enough in a room made for sleep, eventually the room hums you. The nest is empty again. The figure is gone. Or maybe it was never separate. Maybe it was you. You turn your head and see the cradle still and final. The stone inside is darker now, moist with something you can't name. It hasn't moved, but it looks further away. Like it's deepening into the earth, slowly being reclaimed by the spiral, the breath paths, the lullaby that never quite ends. Some cultures believed cradles should never be left facing doors. It let something in, or let something out. One 13th century text copied from an older oral tradition warned against placing a cradle beneath roof beams that had cracked in winter. The logic wood that remembers breaking has already begun to sing. You glance up. The bone beams above you are whole, but just barely. One of them trembles not from pressure but from listening, from resonance, as if it has heard your breath and is tuning itself in response. You are part of the structure now. Another ancient fact. Neolithic dwellings often had pits or hollows in the center of the floor, not for storage but as symbolic wombs. Places where offerings were made to keep the home alive. Seeds, ashes, milk, blood, breath. You are kneeling over to such a hollow. The air has gone still again, and in that stillness, the third line returns. Not as a sound, not as a word, but as a pull, a soft gravitational ache in the chest. A need to finish something ancient, to resolve the melody before it loops again. You feel it in your sternum, in your eyelids, in the spaces behind your teeth. It has always been there. It was never meant to be sung, only felt. That's the seventh joke. A song that finishes itself doesn't need singers, it needs mirrors. And you are full of mirrors now. The walls have stopped breathing. The nest is quiet. The cradle is gone. Not disappeared, just no longer needed. You are what's left. Outside, the sky is changing color, though you can't quite remember if it's evening or morning. Only that light no longer feels like it's meant for you. One final scholarly doubt. A linguist studying the patterns of ancient lullabies once argued that they were less about comfort and more about control. Not to soothe the baby, but to soothe the world around the baby, to order time, to trick the dark into thinking everything was calm. If that's true, then you understand now what the third line does. It isn't a warning, it's a promise, and you've kept it. You haven't fled, you haven't spoken, you haven't interrupted, you have completed the lullaby. And now, you are the silence that follows it. You are the breath that remains. You are the absence the room remembers. You are the song it hums when no one is left. And you are not alone. Somewhere far from this cradle, someone hums without knowing why. A melody passed down in gesture, not sound. A twitch in the finger. A blink too slow. A shadow that pauses before stepping into the room. And the spiral continues. In a village where the wind won't enter homes with cracked beams. In a forest where birds refuse to nest in hollows shaped like ribs. In a dream where a mother forgets her child's name just in time to save them. The melody is never sung again, not because it is lost, but because it is waiting. Soft as breath, heavy as milk, and you now are one of its verses.